The Grand Conference Hall on Axion Prime was a marvel of galactic architecture, an awe-inspiring testament to the diversity of the galaxy's civilizations. Hovering hundreds of meters above the bustling city below, the hall itself seemed to float in space, supported by beams of shimmering light. Its structure defied the limitations of gravity and physics known to many species, symbolizing the advanced knowledge of the galaxy's most ancient races. Inside, a vast dome covered the space, designed to accommodate thousands of beings from various planetary systems. The ceiling glowed with holographic constellations, each star marking the origin of the linguists who had gathered there. Today, the hall was packed with representatives from over 50 species, each member carefully chosen for their expertise in galactic linguistics, a rarefied discipline that only the most respected scholars pursued. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, but a silent frustration simmered beneath it, palpable even across species. For centuries, the most brilliant minds in the galaxy had attempted to create a universal language that would allow beings from all corners of the galaxy to communicate seamlessly. Yet, despite the combined intellectual might of countless races, no solution had emerged. Amelia Grant, a human linguist and the sole representative from Earth, was one of the few humans ever allowed to attend such an event. She felt a twinge of anxiety as she adjusted her translator device and took in the room. The human's relatively recent inclusion in the Galactic Council made her presence an anomaly, and more than a few alien scholars cast curious or wary glances her way. To many of them, humans were still an enigma, resilient and adaptable, yet seemingly primitive in their understanding of the galaxy's complex language systems. Her invitation had been more of a formality, and she knew that most of the other scholars doubted she could contribute anything meaningful. The opening speaker, a distinguished scholar from the planet Clethra named HFY, stepped forward. HFY belonged to a species of crystalline beings that refracted light as they moved, casting rainbows across the walls and ceilings. The Clethrans were renowned for their linguistic prowess. Their language was a series of musical tones and vibrations, which, to most species, sounded like an ethereal melody rather than structured communication. Esteemed colleagues from the far reaches of our galaxy, HFY's voice chimed, the tone resonating through the hall. We convene once again in pursuit of a single, unifying language, a language that can bridge the vast expanse of our differences. She paused, her crystalline form glimmering with a soft, golden hue. Yet after centuries of study, we find ourselves at an impasse. None of our proposals have succeeded in capturing the essence of universal communication. A murmur spread through the hall as her words hit close to home. Representatives from different species exchanged looks of frustration and disappointment. Amelia glanced around, noting the subtle expressions of defeat on some faces, while others maintained a posture of quiet confidence, determined to find a breakthrough. The hall soon erupted in animated discussion, with linguists debating across languages, aided by translation devices that struggled to keep up. Representatives from species with vastly different modes of communication were voicing their grievances. The Icorans, towering beings with exoskeletons resembling insect-like carapaces, clicked and chirped in displeasure, their antennae twitching. Beside them, a group of Lumerans, who communicated through bursts of colored light emitted from their skin, flashed patterns of agitation. A Lumeran scholar near Amelia glowed a dull red, a clear sign of frustration. Amelia adjusted her notes, feeling the weight of the unspoken challenge bearing down on her. She had spent her entire career studying the linguistic complexities of Earth's languages, understanding the power of symbols, sounds, and gestures to convey meaning across diverse cultures. Yet, in this galactic setting, Earth's achievements seemed trivial in comparison to the linguistic feats she was witnessing. The debate raged on, growing more heated by the minute. Scholars from prominent planets argued that the language should rely on a form of communication common among their species. A representative from Crithian Prime, whose language was composed of pheromones undetectable to most beings, insisted that chemical communication was the most efficient and inclusive. This suggestion was met with visible disdain by others who relied on auditory and visual cues for interaction. Amelia felt her heart race. She knew that her presence was largely symbolic. Humans had only recently achieved a position within the Galactic Council, and their contributions were often met with skepticism. However, as she observed the discussions, an idea began to take shape in her mind. Perhaps the answer wasn't about finding a single form of communication that every species could inherently understand. Perhaps the solution was flexibility. Steeling herself, she raised her hand, a gesture recognized as a request to speak across several species. The hum of conversation quieted as attention turned to her. HFY, visibly intrigued, inclined her crystalline head and gestured for Amelia to proceed. "Thank you, esteemed scholars," Amelia began, choosing her words carefully. The translator device at her collar glowed softly as it translated her speech into dozens of galactic dialects. "I understand that I may be an unconventional presence here, and Earth is still a relatively new member of the Council. However, I believe there is an approach we haven't fully considered." A wave of skepticism rippled through the room. Some scholars exchanged looks, their faces expressing doubt, while others crossed their limbs in what was universally understood as a defensive posture. "What if," she continued, "instead of seeking a single method of communication, we designed a language that adapts to the natural communication methods of each species, while maintaining a shared structure of meaning? A flexible language that incorporates the strengths of each mode, sounds, symbols, light, even chemical markers, so that every species can communicate within their own capabilities while understanding others." Her suggestion was met with a stunned silence, followed by scattered murmurs of surprise and curiosity. HFY's crystalline body shimmered a cautious shade of blue, a hue that Amelia had come to recognize as intrigue. Amelia felt a surge of confidence as she continued. "On Earth, we've learned that language can transcend spoken words. Sign languages, visual symbols, and body gestures have allowed us to communicate across barriers. What I'm proposing is a linguistic framework where, for example, a Lumirand could emit a pattern of colors to express a thought, while a Ykoran might click in response, and a Clithran could reply through sound, each using their native mode but adhering to a shared structure of meaning." Her words sparked a new wave of discussions, some animated, others doubtful. Amelia could sense the intensity of the skepticism directed her way, yet she also saw flickers of interest in the eyes or equivalent sensory organs of some scholars. HFY addressed the crowd, her voice a harmonious blend of tones. "This is indeed an unconventional proposal. But perhaps unconventional is precisely what we require to solve this age-old puzzle." She turned to Amelia, her crystalline surface reflecting a vibrant green. "Would you be willing to collaborate with us in testing this idea, human?" Amelia nodded, barely able to contain her excitement. She hadn't expected her idea to gain traction so quickly, especially among such distinguished scholars. Yet the prospect of working alongside the galaxy's most brilliant minds was exhilarating. Thus the first seeds of her revolutionary idea were sown, though she knew it would be an uphill battle. She would have to navigate the intricacies of alien customs, overcome their inherent skepticism, and, perhaps hardest of all, adapt her earthly understanding of language to the vast complexities of galactic communication. But as she looked around the room, she felt a newfound determination. This was her chance to contribute to something far greater than herself, to bridge the gap between worlds, and to create a language that could unite the galaxy. The Axion Prime Research Center was bustling with a mix of excitement and hesitation as the trial phase began. Amelia had never worked under such intense scrutiny, with every move analyzed by the galaxy's top linguists. Her proposal, daring and untested, was an unfamiliar concept to these established minds, who had always thought in terms of strict structures and methods specific to their own civilizations. The laboratory set aside for the trial was expansive, with walls lined by transparent screens displaying streams of data in countless languages, characters, symbols, and color patterns. Each section was dedicated to a specific alien language family, organized by the dominant forms of communication, whether visual, auditory, tactile, or chemical. To Amelia, it felt as if she were standing at the nexus of the galaxy's collective knowledge, a position both exhilarating and humbling. HFY, the Clethrin scholar who had initially expressed interest in Amelia's proposal, floated over, her crystalline body emitting a curious lilac glow as she studied the setup. Amelia had come to understand that each color shift in HFY's body represented subtle shifts in emotion, with shades from deep violet to bright yellow indicating a range from serious contemplation to enthusiasm. "Human, how do you propose we begin?" HFY asked, her voice harmonizing into a soft, resonant note that Amelia's translator captured. Amelia took a breath, organizing her thoughts. The key to the success of this language will be its adaptability, yet it has to maintain a shared structure. I'd like to start by working with representatives from different communication modes, let's say auditory, visual, and tactile first, to establish a common base that respects each species' native communication style. The scientists murmured amongst themselves, some skeptically, others with faint glimmers of interest. From the side, Tychor, a towering Ikoran with a glossy black exoskeleton and a complex clicking language, clicked with barely concealed impatience. He communicated through a series of rapid-fire clicks that the translator rendered only partially, leaving Amelia to read between the lines. "This human proposal assumes an unnatural blend of our languages," Tychor clicked. "Our methods are inherently incompatible. Sounds cannot be translated into color nor clicks into scent." Amelia nodded, prepared for this line of resistance. "It's true that each method is distinct, and yet each of you here has a way of converting meaning into some tangible form that your people understand. My goal is not to make every species understand every sound or color. Rather, it's to create a base that each species can work with in its native form while retaining a central meaning." The room fell quiet as she explained. HFY's body glimmered, capturing the intrigue of a few skeptical faces in her crystalline reflection. With the initial plan set, Amelia began her work. Her first task was to create a small set of symbols that could be universally understood, each representing basic concepts like yes, no, help, and danger. She realized that the alien scholars might find the simplicity almost insulting, but she knew it was necessary to start small before tackling complex concepts. She sketched the symbols out by hand, each carefully chosen for its neutrality, something that could be adapted across forms. For yes, she used a simple upward curve, suggesting agreement or positivity. For no, she chose an intersecting line, a universal symbol of crossing out or negation. To indicate help, she created a spiral, inspired by Earth cultures where spirals symbolized growth or a call for assistance. Finally, for danger, she used a jagged line, representing disruption. Amelia displayed the symbols on a holographic screen and addressed the group. "These are preliminary symbols, which I hope can be interpreted in various forms: sound, color, or even clicks depending on your species' native communication." The scholars studied her work intently. A group of Lumurans immediately began discussing how to translate each symbol into color patterns. For yes, they decided on a warm green; for no, a deep red. Tychor, meanwhile, reluctantly clicked his interpretation of each symbol's meaning, though his skepticism remained evident in his slow, deliberate clicks. Days turned into weeks, and Amelia spent every waking hour in the lab, working closely with representatives from each species. For the tactile species, she developed embossed patterns that could be felt rather than seen, drawing inspiration from Braille-like systems on Earth. Each pattern was paired with its auditory or visual counterpart, forming a unified system. Her goal was clear: a shared structure that allowed each species to interpret meaning in their own way, yet one that held consistent meaning across species lines. But the process was anything but easy. Misunderstandings were frequent. Some species, like the Crithians who relied on pheromone communication, struggled to match smells to abstract concepts. Others, like the aquatic Nereians who communicated through fluid vibrations, found it challenging to adapt their fluid-based language to a fixed structure. Amelia spent hours analyzing each species' communication intricacies, adapting symbols to meet their needs. Her most difficult task was with the species who communicated visually, particularly the Lumerans and the Culurith, a jellyfish-like species that displayed complex patterns on their gelatinous bodies. Their language consisted of shifting colors and patterns which changed based on context, a structure that resisted her attempts at standardization. She had to develop symbols that were adaptable enough to convey similar meanings through colors and patterns without losing clarity. Frustration simmered in the lab, and tensions ran high. Some scholars voiced doubts more openly now, their patience wearing thin. At one point, Tyker confronted her directly, his clicks sharp and rapid. "Your symbols are too simplified, human. You oversimplify concepts that our species have spent millennia developing. This universal language strips away the richness of our own methods." Amelia felt her resolve waver for a moment, but she gathered herself. She understood that the task of creating a universal language meant finding compromise, which often meant letting go of complexities in favor of shared understanding. "Think of this language as a bridge, Tyker," she responded gently. "Not a replacement, but a basic structure that we can all use as a starting point. Each species will still have its native language and its unique expressions. This isn't about taking away, it's about creating a common ground." Ashra, observing the exchange, emitted a soft hum of approval. Perhaps Tyker, the human, has a point. Sometimes simplicity can enhance rather than diminish understanding. Our goal here is unity, not erasure. As the weeks progressed, Amelia began to notice subtle changes. Some of the scholars started using the symbols among themselves, incorporating them into their interactions almost unconsciously. A Wycoran and a Lumiran communicated across the lab, the Wycoran clicking a pattern that the Lumiran responded to with a color shift. Amelia watched with a mix of pride and relief as the symbols started to take hold, bridging the differences bit by bit. Then came a breakthrough. One evening, while reviewing data in the lab alone, Amelia received a message from an unexpected source, Tyker. He had sent her a series of clicks encoded in her new language, requesting a meeting to discuss potential adaptations that could integrate the Yokoran click patterns more naturally. She smiled, realizing that even her most vocal critic was beginning to see the possibilities of her system. In their meeting, Tyker explained the Yokoran click structure in detail, showing Amelia how certain rhythms and pauses indicated complex ideas. Together, they modified the universal symbols to include an option for rhythm-based interpretation, allowing the Yokorans to maintain their linguistic rhythm while staying within the universal framework. With Tyker's help, Amelia's prototype language grew stronger, gaining acceptance among more and more scholars. Though challenges remained, the collaborative effort transformed the language into something richer and more adaptable than she had initially envisioned. The once skeptical scholars began to see the value in a structure that respected their individuality yet allowed for shared understanding. Amelia stood at the center of the grand auditorium on Axion Prime, her heart pounding as she gazed at the gathered assembly. The hall, with its awe-inspiring height and magnificent views of the surrounding cosmos, was packed with scholars and dignitaries from across the galaxy, each representing worlds with unique cultures, histories, and most critically languages. Word had spread quickly about her ambitious project, and today marked the culmination of months of intense collaboration and adaptation. The time had come to showcase the progress they had made, to prove that a universal language for the galaxy was possible. The demonstration hall was a technological marvel, equipped with holographic projectors and interactive panels that would allow each participant to experience the language through their own communication modes: sound, color, light, and even tactile patterns. The air hummed with a sense of anticipation mixed with skepticism. For many of these alien scholars, the concept of a shared language still felt like an impossible dream, a disruption to the traditions and linguistic intricacies their species had cherished for millennia. Standing beside Amelia was Ashra, her crystalline body glowing with a vibrant emerald hue, a signal of support and encouragement. Amelia offered a slight nod to her, grateful for the Clithran's unwavering support. Ashra had not only been an ally but also a bridge to the other scholars, lending her credibility and easing some of the skepticism Amelia faced as a human outsider. Amelia took a steadying breath and addressed the audience, her voice amplified by the hall's built-in translation system. Esteemed scholars and representatives, thank you for joining us today. Over the past few months, we have worked tirelessly to create a foundational language that can bridge the vast divides between our forms of communication. What we present to you now is not a replacement for your native languages, but a tool at common ground. She gestured to the holographic display that appeared above her, showcasing the core symbols of her prototype language. Each symbol rotated slowly, accompanied by a brief description of its intended meaning: hello, help, understand, peace, danger, and cooperate. These were not arbitrary choices. Amelia had selected words that embodied the essence of universal needs, hoping they would resonate with every species present. Today, she continued, you will witness the adaptability of this language. Each symbol can be translated into sound, light, touch, or scent, depending on the speaker's native form of expression, while retaining its meaning for all participants. I invite representatives from 3 species to join me in a demonstration, using the shared language to communicate across our differences. Her gaze swept across the crowd, and 3 volunteers stepped forward. Ticor from the Uikoran species, representing tactile communication through clicks and vibrations. Sira, a Lumiran with a luminous, color-shifting form, and Vi, a Nerian, whose fluid-based language was conveyed through a series of resonant hums and vibrations. The scholars watched with rapt attention as Amelia guided the representatives to their respective stations, each equipped with technology that translated the universal symbols into the form native to each participant. She stepped back, allowing the volunteers to begin. Ticor was first. The translation interface beside him displayed a pattern of symbols he recognized, each one accompanied by a rhythm he could click out. Ticor's clicks echoed through the hall, each one resonating with the symbols displayed. To the untrained ear, the clicks might have seemed like a random sequence, but Amelia understood the intention behind each sound. His clicks formed the phrase peace and understanding, a simple yet powerful statement. As Ticor finished, Sarah, the Lumiran, responded by shifting her body into colors that represented the same phrase. A cascade of deep blues and greens spread across her form, shimmering and pulsing in a rhythmic pattern that captivated the audience. Lumirans communicated emotions and ideas through complex color displays, and here, in the universal language, Sarah's colors were conveying Ticor's message back to him. Vi, the Nerian, was next. Nerians communicated through fluid vibrations that humans might associate with musical notes, and VA translated Ticor's clicks and Sarah's colors into a sequence of resonant hums. Each vibration echoed across the hall, bringing a harmonized sound to Ticor's phrase that everyone could feel reverberating in their chests, creating an almost tactile experience of the words peace and understanding. The exchange was seamless, flowing from clicks to colors to vibrations, each scholar speaking in their own language, yet remaining connected by a shared meaning. The effect was mesmerizing, leaving the hall in awed silence. For the first time, beings from entirely different species were having a conversation, one that required no translator, no complex machinery beyond the symbols Amelia had devised. The audience's reaction was mixed but largely positive. Some scholars exchanged excited whispers, marveling at the simplicity and elegance of the system. Others looked pensive, as though grappling with the implications of what they had just witnessed. Among them was a group of Crithian scholars, whose pheromone-based language had proven difficult to adapt. Yet even they seemed impressed, their antennae twitching in what Amelia had learned to recognize as intrigue. Buoyed by the response, Amelia invited a few more volunteers to participate, gradually expanding the range of symbols used. She watched as Lumirans, Ikorans, Nerians, and even a few hesitant Crithians attempted to communicate. They used Amelia's symbols to convey basic greetings, expressions of thanks, and words of curiosity and collaboration. What had once been a room full of individuals isolated by their unique languages was now a community bound by a common tool. But the true test was yet to come. HFY, who had been observing with a gentle, encouraging glow, approached Amelia and gestured for silence. "Human Amelia," she began, her crystalline voice resonating in a soothing, musical tone. "This demonstration has shown us that your language has potential. But we must see if it can handle more complex ideas, concepts that extend beyond simple greetings or statements of peace. If this language is to unify us, it must be capable of carrying our deepest meanings." Amelia nodded, fully aware of the challenge. "Understood, HFY. I propose a test using a concept that each species here holds sacred, the idea of home." The murmurs rose again, quieter this time, filled with curiosity. Home was a powerful word, resonating with every species, though each understood it in their own way. For some, it meant the physical place they had left behind; for others, a feeling of safety or belonging. But it was a word that all understood at their core. Amelia carefully brought up the symbol she had crafted for home, a shape resembling an enclosed spiral, representing a place of return and protection. She explained its meaning, aware that this was perhaps the most significant test her language had faced. As before, Tyker was the first to respond. His clicks were slower this time, more deliberate, almost reverent. Each click carried weight, echoing across the hall. He clicked a phrase that roughly translated to, "A place where my people's stories live." Next was Sarah, the Lumiran, who shifted her colors to deep, warm hues that pulsed slowly. For Lumiran's home was not just a physical location but a spiritual connection to their ancestors. Her body radiated a soothing amber light, a sign of reverence for the generations that had come before. Va, the Nerian, followed. For his species, home was the place where water ran freely, connecting them to the lifeblood of their world. His hums were low and resonant, vibrating through the hall in a way that felt both comforting and grounding. One by one, representatives shared their interpretation of home, each species contributing to a tapestry of meanings. Amelia watched as their unique expressions converged, each one tied together by the shared symbol. She could feel the emotion in the room, the collective realization that despite their vast differences, they all understood this concept. It was a moment of unity, born not out of sameness but through a shared respect for their differences. As the final notes and colors faded, a deep silence settled over the room. The impact was undeniable. Amelia had succeeded in demonstrating that her language could convey not only simple phrases but also deep, universal emotions. HFY turned to face the assembly, her crystalline body glowing with a vibrant gold declithrin color for triumph. "This language has shown us that understanding is not bound by form or species. Today we have seen a bridge built between worlds, crafted from our shared desire to connect." Amelia felt a swell of pride as the assembly burst into applause, or its equivalent, a symphony of clicks, hums, and color shifts. She had done it. She had proven that a common language could unite beings from across the galaxy. And as she stood there, surrounded by the vibrant expressions of gratitude and awe, she knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had taken its first step toward a unified future, one where communication was no longer a barrier but a pathway to shared discovery and growth. And Amelia, the human linguist from Earth, had helped make it possible.